In this lesson, we will be reading and annotating as well as analyzing Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. So let's go ahead and read the poem together. Still I rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops weakened by my mournful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestor gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Okay, now remember with a poem, it takes a couple times to read it to understand it. But first, let's go ahead and let's start to analyze and annotate. The first thing you want to do when you are trying to annotate is to circle any unknown words and then try to define them in the margins. So here I see a couple of words I don't understand. So the first word I probably don't know is trod. So I'm going to circle it and then I'm going to look for the definition. In this case, the word trod means trample. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in. Another word that I might not know is the word beset, because that's really kind of an older word. We don't see it used a lot. Now, beset means someone who is troubled or threatened. So I'm going to write that in. Troubled / threatened. Now later on in the poem, I see this word haughtiness. Haughtiness means someone who is snobbish or too proud. Now I don't see any of the words that I feel I need to define, but if you feel that you need to define any words, then please take your time to circle them and look them up. Now, when you annotate, what you're going to do is you're going to go stanza by stanza and you're going to ask yourself questions, try to make connections, look for figurative language, and just try to paraphrase and put things into your own words. Just any notes that you might need to take, that's what you're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with the first stanza. Now, I see here it says, you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. Now, I need to figure out who is you. So I'm going to ask myself, I'm going to put a question here. Who is the audience? And I'm going to leave myself space for an answer. And hopefully by the end of this, I'll be able to figure out who the audience is. Because in the first two lines right here, I can see that the speaker is speaking to the audience with a very accusatory tone. So begins with accusatory tone. So I'm going to write that down, that they begin with an accusatory tone. Now it says, you may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. So here I'm seeing a simile, still like dust I'll rise. So this is a simile. And usually dust or dirt, so dirt / dust, equals some sort of unfortunate circumstance. So our speaker is in some sort of unfortunate situation. And so we have to try to figure out what that is. Now, I want to know, I see this phrase, I'll rise, and it's repeated a lot. So whenever that happens, I like to take my highlighter, I like to highlight it, and as I read, I'm going to highlight every time I see it, and I'm going to try to figure out why is I rise repeated. So I'm going to ask myself another question over here, okay? And I'm going to ask, why is I'll rise repeated? And I'm going to then leave myself some space for an answer. I want to know, why is I'll rise repeated? And then hopefully by the end I'll be able to answer this question. Okay, let's continue. It says, does my sassiness upset you? Well, why is she sassy? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it over here. I'm going to ask myself another question. So my question is, why is the speaker sassy? And I'm going to give myself some space to answer that question, and hopefully I'll be able to get to that. And then it says, why are you beset with gloom? So why, she's asking her audience why they're troubled or threatened by her. So that is very interesting. I'm going to, now I'm wondering, well, why, why is the audience threatened by her? So I'm going to ask that question as well. So I'm going to put my little line over here, and I'm going to put my cue, and I'm going to put, why is the audience threatened by the speaker? And then I'll leave myself some space for an answer. And it says, because I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Okay, so we're seeing a comparison. She walks like she's got oil wells. So I'm trying to think, okay, well, oil is kind of a sign of wealth. So I'm going to put that over here. So I'm going to put wealth so I can remember that oil is a sign of wealth. And if you think about that, she's walking like she's wealthy. So maybe the speaker's proud. So I'm going to put speaker is proud. And then, I'm trying to figure out why she's saying this. So she's sassy, they're threatened by her, and then she's walking like she's full of wealth. But she was just in the dirt earlier, so maybe she's gaining the wealth. So these are the connections I'm trying to make as I'm analyzing this poem. Let's continue. It says, just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, I'll rise. Okay, well, I see that phrase again, I'll rise. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight it because I want to count how many times that's been said. And I'm seeing celestial imagery here. So we're seeing suns and moons. So it says, just like moons and suns with the certainty of tides. So the suns and moons always rise. We know that. Every single day we can expect to see the sun in the sky or the moon. So suns and moons, sun/moon, always. So always, there we go, rise. So that says always. And so the sun and the moon always rise, and so will she. So will the speakers. Okay, so it says certainty of tides. I like to think of the tides as like the passing of time. So she's always going to rise no matter how much time passes. And just like hope springing high, we're seeing a lot of similes here. Here's a simile, just like the moons and the sun was a simile. So we're seeing a lot of similes. And again, we see still I rise. So then it says, did you want to see me broken? Okay, so again, we're seeing that audience in very accusatory tone. Did you want to see me broken? That brings me back to my question of who is the audience? Okay, now let's pause right here and then go ahead and go to part 2, and we'll continue the poem there.